Oh, yeah, I haven't been once. I haven't.
Yes.
Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Oh, you don't want to record me.
Recording, good to go. Good to go.
Just so you know, we're being aired, so be careful what you say. It's being aired and it's also on Facebook. Thank you so much for coming. This is so important a subject that I'm glad you made it here. We're going to have a few people trickling in because of the traffic, but I thank you for showing up and being here for those of you that are on time. As we all know, human trafficking is something that most people will think of a teenager and sex. But what we're going to discuss tonight is the elderly, which has been put in the background, and it's so important. But before we start that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Tim Meyerbot of Cutler Bay for a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Welcome to Cutler Bay. It's certainly an honor to have you here in our house to discuss a very important issue. To me, this is a very sad issue. It's to think of modern slavery. It's just unthinkable in a modern society. And trying to figure out, most people aren't aware of what's going on. I was one of those that wasn't really quite aware of the extent of it until Gene kind of brought it to my attention. And of course, when you hear something like that, again, you're saddened and you want to try to do what we can. So I told her I'd make a commitment. I'll try to bring awareness as much as I can. You know, a lot of people hear me speak quite often. So I wanted to give you guys this venue and the opportunity to just go ahead and get the word out. Tonight, Cutler Bay we're broadcasting this on Facebook. So you'll have a wider audience, and we're also recording it so you all can share with many others later on. So I think the message and the information that you have to share it's invaluable. And the only way we can stop it is if people are aware and be enlisted into the Army to help fight against this. So I'm glad you guys are here. I'm saddened the reason that you have to be here, but I'm certainly glad that you all are here in our house to do something about this. So thank you for being here and thank you for letting us all work together on helping resolve this.
Okay, I just want to introduce a few members that are here today. We have from our Commission for Women, we have a couple members here that have joined us. We have our National Council of Jewish Women, Sally Rossamano. We have Kenneth, last name, from the Veterans Affairs. And I have my club members from the Cutler Ridge Women's Club. Thank you all for being here. And without ado, I'd also like, I forgot him out. No, Julio, I didn't. Julio Rodriguez back there, who is representing Commissioner Daniela Cohen-Higgins. Thank you, Julio, for coming. And without ado, I'd like to introduce Victor Williams, who is our speaker this evening. Victor.
Thank you guys for having me. And before I start my presentation, I'm going to have Kenneth come up from the VA to talk about a couple things that's going on there.
Yeah. Good evening. As you look to your screens, left and right, folks, my name is Kenneth Mueller. I'm with the Department of Veterans Affairs, Miami, Florida. I live in Homestead. But as you look to the screens, if you have spouses that are veterans, or you're a veteran yourself, or you're a retired veteran, there's some locations and some help. This document can be shared with the whole council, with everybody in this room. On the bottom of the document, I'll actually provide the website, but you can see it has photos, phone numbers, addresses of every facility that we operate out of. All the way from Deerfield Beach, our northern clinic, all the way down as far as Key West, our most southern clinic. And we're responsible, my office or our main facility out of Miami is responsible for all those clinics. Like I said, you keep seeing the photos as they are scrolling through. And the last thing you're going to come to will be the website that you can go to on the intranet in order to see these exact same things that you're seeing on the screen today. So right there, the last hyperlink, if you click on that right there, that'll take you to the intranet. It'll take you to this locations of our facilities. Very good resources for those that don't know. anybody in crisis, suicide helpline, or any thing that's going to be discussed tonight as far as human trafficking, you could discuss these things with your physicians, your doctors, and they will be more than happy to help you with the right resources that you need to get to. Are there any questions before we turn it back over to Mr. Victor Williams?
Any events that, like communities can support that you guys have?
Community support, we do have housing, HUD-VASH that we assist people as well as getting back into vocational or get them to school or to a program that'll get them, place them in a job. So we have vocational rehabilitation. We have music therapy. We have, the gamut is never stopping. Let's put it that way. So if you think of it, we probably have it at our facility. So those are just a few resources, but if you have friends, family, parents, anybody like that that's not knowledgeable of this, that's the place to go. This is the website to visit. And my direct phone line, if anybody wants to take it down, is 305-575-6966. 305-575-6966. And my mobile number is 305-803-3933. Any questions?
And it's very remiss of me, but I'd like to thank the town of Cutler Bay, Mayor Merbot, Susie Lord, and Ralph Casals, the town manager, for allowing us to be here tonight and to use their facilities. Thank you.
Righty. So thank you guys for having me here today. And I don't know how many of you know, I know Gene's crew knows that it's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And the reason why, I'm here and doing what I do, I am the vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition, which is a service providing organization run by the Coordinated Victims Assistance Center, CVAC. Yvonne Mesa runs that program, and it's a service providing organization. I am a retired special agent with Homeland Security is when I first came across Gene's path. And I was the court, no, that's right, I didn't arrest her. But the last 8 years of my career, I worked human trafficking, and it changed my life. People ask, how did I get involved with this? Why is this so important to me? Because as I learned in this space and realized that it changed me as a human being, I figured, wow, if I could learn something to change myself, it can do the same for others. When I first got involved with this, I was assigned to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, and I had the opportunity to go to Botswana, Africa, to the International Law Enforcement Academy, where I first got a human trafficking course, and they talked about modern day slavery. So being an African-American, whenever I heard the word slavery, it kind of brings my attention. So when I got back to the States, my time was up with the FBI, and I went back to the Homeland Security Special Agent in Charge Miami office, and I got assigned to the Human Trafficking Unit. While I am sitting at the Human Trafficking Unit in Miami, I'm sitting next to an agent that has a case of about 8 women that were trafficked from Mexico. And for 8 months, these women are like, we're not trafficked, we're not trafficked. And the men that were trafficking them was going to go to trial because we don't, obviously, if they're saying they're not trafficked, we don't have witnesses, right? And what we found out is that one of the women in that group was part of the trafficking organization, keeping them afraid to come out. And when we realized that, pulled them out, pulled her out, sent her back home, all the women came clean and was like, yes, what you guys were thinking was true. So now the men are like, okay, we're gonna plea to try to get less time. And this is what changed my life. One of the women that were trafficked got up to give her impact statement to the judge. to let the judge know, well, he should maximize these guys' penalties. And she talked about they took her from the age of 14. They trafficked her for 12 years. And I don't know, I know you guys live south. I don't know if you've ever been down to Homestead and seen the fields where people are picking our fruits and vegetables. That's not a clean job. And that woman was brought here to serve those men sexually. They didn't go home, take a shower, put on cologne, show up at the trailer. They left those dirty fields and they went to that trailer, not to have sex, because it wasn't sex, it was rape. And she was serving 15 to 25 a day. And to hear this woman look at those men for the first time, that she can say, what you did to me was wrong. It changed my life at that moment. And I knew I was going to be working in this space forever. So let's talk about, what is human trafficking? Human trafficking basically are three elements: force, fraud, and coercion. You need one of these elements to have a human trafficking case. Now, those elements only apply to adults. So if you're a child under the age of 18, there is no such thing as child prostitution. They are victims. And understand this, human trafficking laws came about in the year 2000 when the United Nations charged all countries to deal with this. So in the year 2000, the Trafficking Victims Act, the TVPA of 2000, gave us our first laws on human trafficking. Not to say that this wasn't happening way before. So it took the state of Florida 16 years when the law says if you're under the age of 18, you are a victim. But it took the state of Florida 16 years to finally pass a law that says no more arresting underage children that are being sexually exploited. And I'm pretty sure there's probably a state or two out there that may still be making these arrests. And you got to ask yourself, why is that? So when I retired in 2018, I bought the domain called Quest of Freedom. And I had an idea of, from my experiences, I was going to go out in the world and educate people in this space like I was educated. But I guess life had other turns and other issues that I had to go and grow into the space. When I retired in 2018, I moved to Atlanta. I did 2 years of team security for the Atlanta Hawks, and it wasn't feeding my soul. You know, a lot of people like, wow, that gotta be a cool job. And it was, but it wasn't for me. And I realized what was for me, because when I left the Hawks, the state of Georgia had gotten their grant money for human trafficking, and I became the human trafficking coordinator for the state of Georgia for a year. It just gave me a different perspective. And I left and moved back here in August of 2001. Kind of goofed off a little bit, but I did have a couple of assignments. The National Basketball Association had their security conference here before the season started this year. And I called them up and said, hey guys, I want to do a human trafficking presentation for you. And they agreed, but you want to know why? Because a father took his 15-year-old daughter to a basketball game. I won't call out the state or the team. I'll tell you it was not the Heat. Took his daughter to a basketball game. She went to the bathroom, and the next time he saw his daughter was 11 days later when they rescued her from another state being sold for sex. And I remember when I went to go work for the Hawks, and Gene knows my passion for this has always been there. I just had to figure out how to channel it and when to do what I'm doing now. I had a lot of friends like, oh, Vic, go work for the Hawks, but don't be talking that human trafficking stuff, right? But here we are doing a presentation for the entire security of the NBA. And when I left, a lot of those guys came up and like, Vic, we've been here for 2 days, and this is the best training we had. Why? Because this is personal. This is personal. I give training to law enforcement. Yeah, you may be there because of your job, but this is personal, because you know what? law enforcement kids can be trafficked too. So I want to just give you guys a little history of this. The reason this exists is because of culture. If we're talking about human trafficking, there's a lot of things that went wrong in somebody's life before they became a human trafficking victim. There's a lot of things that went wrong in somebody's life before a trafficker started trafficking someone. And if we don't start dealing with those resources, then basically all we're doing is putting Band-Aids over it. We have to go to the source. And where's the source? Where do human trafficking victims come from? They come from our homes. They come from our homes with generational trauma that is passed on and passed on. Unresolved trauma creates vulnerability, and vulnerability is what traffickers seek to exploit. Everybody talks about sex trafficking. Yeah, see the movie Taken. But labor trafficking is 60 to 70% of all trafficking when we look at it in the world, 60 to 70%. So what does that mean? That kind of means, you know what? We're all responsible, including myself. What do I mean by that? If we're buying products from slave labor, we're all part of the problem, whether we know it about it or not. I'll save my little statement at the end that I normally say, just to take you guys there a little deeper. But we are here today to talk about something that I was talking about for a long time. Right before I left Georgia, we had a presentation. I had someone call me from one of the local counties because I was coordinator, and they said, Vic, what do you know about benefit trafficking? I go, well, what do you mean? What's that? And she goes, the elderly. And I say, well, I remember being in a meeting, hearing about elderly people being, exploited. They didn't really use the name benefit trafficking. And she put together an amazing presentation that kind of like woke me up. But even before I had that training, I had the opportunity when I first went to Atlanta, I did financial investigations, telemarketing fraud. Anybody ever heard of that? Telemarketing fraud. That was the original thing that was exploiting elderlies, because we get it. You may be lonely, a nice voice on the phone sounding friendly and inviting, and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? Next thing you know, you're missing thousands of dollars. I learned so much from that. And it was a great opportunity because it was most of these cases were running out of Canada. That was the home where people were doing all this fraud work and sending letters and making phone calls. But I have to tell you, we ended up catching one of the perpetrators in Atlanta. We ended up flipping her and running, pretending to be elderly and just to follow the money. And we ended up capturing a couple of guys that were running the organization, had them extradited here in the United States in Georgia at the time and prosecuted. But it took a while. Why does it take so long for us to make the adjustment when we know things are wrong? And it's called culture. Culture is what starts human trafficking, and culture is what keeps it going right now. I don't have my PowerPoint because I didn't plan on doing a presentation of my usual PowerPoint, but there was a pre-human trafficking Victor. There's a Victor, a male raised in America that had crazy thoughts, did a lot of stupid things. And funny thing, I've known Kenny now for a year and just found out he's a vet from the Coast Guard. Well, I was in the Coast Guard. And I've traveled, I've done a lot of things. But when I started working human trafficking, it really opened up my eyes. And my whole point was I have to eliminate my footprints in this space. So I could tell you a lot of crazy stories. I'm not sure you want to stay here and listen to that, right? But what I want to do first is have, or at least show a little video clip to, for some of you guys don't know about benefit fraud right away. We're going to show a little clip about what's happening in this country. Now, no, this is from the state of Georgia. I'm sure it's happening here. I'm sure it's happening all over. And from working with them, and when they were contacting me, they were like, Vic, there's no policies for this. We don't even have certain laws or grants to fight this. So take a look. There you go. And so if you can pull up the PowerPoint when you get a chance. So that blew me away when I saw this. It was such an amazing, moving PowerPoint and presentation that she did when I transferred back here and was offered the position of vice chair of the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition, which is a not paid position. I immediately got her on, and I think that's when Kenneth and I first met, because I know it's not just happening to seniors that are not military, but you got to think about our vets. You know, our vets are in that same situation. They get a check every month and they're getting exploited for it. So this PowerPoint is the only PowerPoint that I know of. Now, I will give you some positive news in this way. We'll go through the PowerPoint, just point out some other things, because it's all about awareness. It's all about awareness. You got friends, you don't see them for a while. Why? You know, what's going on? Should we go visit them? That's it. They don't want you to come in the house. Why? You know, these are the things we got to talk about. This is happening to you. What do you do? Who do you call? So I will give you something positive. Ms. Rundle, Kathy Rundle, the state attorney, is looking into this. She has just started a campaign to talk about elderly abuse. And I know there's a lot of work that's coming in this space, you know, for citizens in this area. I don't work for Ms. Rundle. So what I'm about to say is because of my knowledge of working with her. When you work in a space of human trafficking and it's all you do, the learning curve is a little bit shorter. But if I got to do sex crimes, rape crimes, and human trafficking, it makes it very difficult. And Ms. Rundle gets it because she has a whole unit just working on human trafficking. And that's 4 or 5 attorneys that this is all they do. So I don't know of many state attorneys that are that dedicated. I know they're out there, but right now she's the only one that I know that has taken this stand very serious. And so just going through this PowerPoint, so when we talk about human trafficking, we talked about the elements of human trafficking, but what types of human trafficking we got going on? Right here, they only have 3: sex trafficking, labor trafficking that we talked about. There's another one that's missing called servitude and debt bondage. What is servitude and debt bondage? I invite somebody here from another country to work for me, or I can invite anybody. It could be someone from the United States, come work for me. And what people don't know is that a lot of times when that happens, the first thing the person does is take the documents. If I take your documents, there is a law against that right now. Under the guise of, no, you work for me, I'm responsible for you being in my country, I got to take your documents. It's against the law. But understand why human traffickers want to take your documents. Because if I take your documents, you can't get on a bus, plane, or train. You can't apply for a job, and I can't identify who you are. So I just took away your way of movement, and I just took away your way of making a living. And if you just happen to be underage, I just took away an opportunity for police to identify who you are. And I can remember as an agent here having a case of a young woman that was trafficked here from Maryland. And she got arrested 3 times for prostitution. And she was using her sister's name, which was obviously she was older, until we got the case and found out. Because if she was being under the age of 18, again, that wouldn't have made her a victim. But that's just to give you some ideas how cruel traffickers are and some tools. If people, you're asking people, let me see your ID, and they go, oh, this person got it. Why? Why do someone need to hold your ID? So we got sex trafficking, labor trafficking, servitude, debt bondage, organ trafficking. I was on a program the other day, and I have never done an organ trafficking case, but this is something you guys need to be aware of. And when I was on the radio show, I happened to be on the show with another mayor of another city. I don't know if I want to call out the name. I'll just leave it at that. And when I mentioned organ trafficking, and I said, well, you know, this is something that's not happening in the States. We don't see this that much, because we always thought it was something that was happening in Europe a lot. You find yourself drunk, you wake up in a tub and, you know, bleeding, and some of your body parts are missing. This is what I was advised. Certain communities that don't speak the language, that don't know their rights, that don't understand a lot of things in the United States. A family member gets sick, goes to the hospital for whatever reason, and before the family gets there, they're greeted with, oh, your family member is brain dead and we're removing their body parts without you even knowing, right? Does that make sense? Anybody? Right, it's kind of like, what? Now, maybe that's done under the guise of some type of legal process, and I'm not calling out any hospitals. I'm not calling out anybody on that. I'm just saying, matter of fact, the person that was interviewing me on the radio, he's a lawyer, and he's mentioned cases that he's had like this. And he kind of said to me, like, you know, if you got organ donor on your license, you might want to be careful, because if you don't have the right support, there may be somebody working in that system that knows somebody that needs your body part. And if you don't have the right support, it's a possibility, you know, that, yeah, they're saying you're brain dead, but you might just be unconscious just for your body parts. I'm just throwing it out there. Haven't had a case, but it did enlighten me. And that might be something we might need to look into in the future. So those are your 4 types of trafficking. Okay, this is, oh, there we go. So when we talk about, and you guys can hear me, right? So when we talk about human trafficking, these are some of the things that we look at. And why is it so important for us to understand? Because you may not understand all of it, but if one thing is sticking out, you know, so when we look at human trafficking, the setup, we're talking about the act. What is the act? We got recruitment, we got transportation, we got transfer, we got harboring, which means I'm holding you in my apartment. Then the means, what are we looking at means? The threat, that's the force, that's the fraud, that's the coercion, that's how I'm keeping you there. And what's the purpose? Exploitation, money, greed. That woman, now, when I talk about sex trafficking and the person, like you asked the question, what happens to a human being to sell another human being? I kind of get that a little bit. Like I said, a lot of human traffickers come from the homes that the victims come from, right? But that is strictly, that's all greed. I mean, I don't know what that lady was, that is all greed. So I don't know where she come from, but anyway, it's important that we know the setup and the function of human trafficking. I think I have to be over here. All right, there we go. So what does that look like in benefit fraud? So when we talk about the act, you know, recruitment, referrals via hospitals, shelters, churches, licensed facilities, jail, homeless shelters. That's the act. Let me put you in these places. You know, what's the means? Same thing. Promises of benefits, services. Basically, they want your check. They want your money. And what's the purpose again? They want your check. They want your money. Veterans benefits, your food stamps, all the things that other people can gain that elderly people earned, you know, working all their lives, the Social Security that they earn, and these people want to take it. These are the places that we've known that these cases have happened. And you see a star right there in Florida. And look, we got everybody's moving to Florida. I mean, I learned a long time ago, it's warm down here. I don't even want to go up north anymore. So we're seeing an influx of people retiring here. So, you know, we need to be aware of this stuff. These are just some of the joys, but I'm just going to go over a couple of the cases that happened. And I some of this stuff I tried to edit out, get rid of. But this is one of those types of PowerPoints that you can't make any changes to it. So I'm not going to try to linger in that space too long because this PowerPoint shows some really bad stuff. This was a situation where this person was supposed to be taking care of elderly people. Kind of like the same case that you just saw, locked in a basement. Look at that house. Looked like a very nice house. These are some of the signs. Now, why do I need a lock on the outside? Right? That's a weird thing, right? Something you should be aware. Because if I want to keep people out, I got a lock on the inside. Why do I have a lock on the outside? Because now maybe I'm trying to keep people in. Just something to be aware of. Similar situation that you heard, crawl place. Look how dirty it is. Look how they're sleeping. Let's flash through that. And the owner operator, some of the things that how they benefited. She was paid. This particular case was really egregious because this woman took this person somewhere and had them have sex, paid sex, filmed it, and then used it against them like, oh, if you don't do more for me, I'm going to turn this in and further exploit you. And that's this person. That's the time she got. And I love the fact that after you get out of jail, because sometimes probation is harder than being in jail. I mean, you can't do nothing wrong. You better show up or you're back in jail. And I'm going to skip through this case, get to one more just to talk about. Now, this person, look how much money she made over 3 years exploiting people. That's how much time she got. And this is the one that I really want to show you guys because a lot of times you see these ads. Look at this ad, very professionally done. You're like, oh, these guys look reputable. Let me call them up and see if they want to take care of my grandmother or my friend. Very, very reputable ad. But this was the facility. This is where they were keeping people. They had rented places. They were using vacant houses all over. That's the people that were doing that. So I don't want to go any further because really this PowerPoint is really made for investigators. It was put together so investigators could know what to look for. But I just wanted to bring it up to you guys because you live in your community. You have friends. You have family. And everybody should know a little bit about this because nobody knows nothing. And until that moment, I had this training. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of law enforcement people who have not had this training. I worked in law enforcement, counting my Coast Guard time, and I can count Coast Guard as law enforcement because a petty officer in the Coast Guard is considered a customs officer. And I drove boats, I did rescues, I had my own crew. So in my 34 years, 6 months and 29 days, who was counting, right? I worked in trafficking. That's what I worked law enforcement. We never talked about this stuff. So when I go back to culture, and I'll end with this, when we go back to culture, a lot of things we do because we don't know any better. I always say if the world was a perfect place, really, every country would really make family and children their priority. Because you can be rich or poor, but a lot of times families just don't have the answers. Parents that are listening to this, my biggest advice that I can give you right now is that parents got to have a relationship with their children that the children can come tell them the worst thing that's going on in their lives. Yeah, I want you to cut the grass. Yeah, I want you to make your bed and wash the dishes, but it can't be to a detriment that our relationship is where you can't trust me, that you can't tell me. And parents, we got to check ourselves. Sometimes we carry along the generational trauma. We need to be aware of this, because if we're not, that means we're passing it on to our kids. Because if our kids can't talk to you, who do they talk to? So one other area that we don't talk about a lot, and that's the LGBTQ plus community. Because of the people they choose to love, they can't get jobs, and they're being heavily exploited in this space. When I retired in 2018, there was 46% of boys being trafficked. So it's not just young ladies, that women and young ladies, yeah, they are a higher number when it comes to sex, no doubt. When we talk labor, that's a lot of men going on. One of the cases we did in Homestead, police, everybody don't want to talk to police, bad time. I get it. Maybe we got to revamp, reconnect. But a service provider that was servicing the community down in Homestead, it was a father and son. Sometimes these companies don't know. They hire people to go hire people to pick the fruits and vegetables that we have. And those people get exploited. And we found a father and son that was doing that. And initially, those people didn't want to talk. And this is what you got to understand about human trafficking, educating to change culture, victim-centered, trauma-informed, victim-centered, trauma-informed. It's not about my case. It's about the individual. It's about the person going through the experience. And culturally, if they don't want our help, we're like, well, you must not be trafficked. That's not the case. This is what I'm talking about, culture. We do a lot of victim blaming in our culture. Why are you wearing that dress? Why did you go to that club? Why did you, go in that neighborhood or walk down that alley? It's enough of that. We need to start coming together, educating ourselves. It ain't getting better. We're making progress. So how do we change culture? This is my philosophy. We have to educate each other to the level that we understand our responsibilities here. And then we have to look to our political leaders to set policy, to set laws. But at the end of the day, it comes back to us. When we're faced with certain situations, we got to make those choices, which means it comes back to us. So that might mean we might need to change. We might need to look inside ourselves and ask, why are we choosing to think this way and feel this way? Because a lot of times nobody cares until it's happening to them. And just to give you an example, and some of you can verify this, hey, in my day, domestic violence was something that everybody turned away, called it a family thing. Oh, that's a family thing. But then somebody came along and educated us and said, no, violence is not the answer. And then we have policies and laws. As a law enforcement person, if I had a misdemeanor human trafficking situation, I lose my gun. I lose my job. DUI. We used to give keys to drunk people. I can remember I had an uncle. He would always stop by my grandmother's house and he would get a little toasted. And you believe, but that was the culture. All right, kids, your uncle's going home. Help him to the car. We won't even think about doing that now, right? But that's what we did. Fortunately, he never hurt anybody and he didn't hurt himself. But that was culture. So we have to wake up. We have to wake up. It's about us. It's about numbers. When we come together because we've educated ourselves and we understand the problem, we can make the changes. I know I sound like I'm running for office, right? But I'm not. This is that important to me. And I speak at this level because I know that's what happened to me. I came into this space with the cultural stuff that I believe. Oh, those women, what's wrong with them? They don't want help? I didn't know why they didn't want help. Then I learned about trauma bonding. Sometimes it's easier for people to be with the devil they know than to go to the devil they don't know. But that, understand that, right? I give you another mindset change, and I hope this is not offensive to anybody in here. But right before I came here today, I took a class on sex work to try to understand what's going on. What was that about? And it has me thinking. But think about this. Think about this culturally. I'm sure some of you have heard the words prostitution, the world's oldest profession. Have we not? Some people have heard that. First of all, farming is the world's oldest profession. But if you think prostitution is the world's oldest profession, the world's oldest customer. And what do? We spend time demonizing the person that's selling and that who could be the potential victim instead of changing the culture to demonize the people that's creating the market. How about that? How about that twist? How about if we started doing that? What would this look like? So at the end, like I said before, I used to leave people with, now that you know what you're going to do. But before I tell my new story, I'm going to give you some resources to call that if you suspect any human trafficking, I'm going to give you some resources that you can call. And trust me, I would rather you make that call not being sure then don't make the call at all, and then it turned out to be human trafficking. So first of all, we got the national hotline, which is run by an organization called Polaris. You can Google polarisproject.org, and you can learn a lot of things about the statistics that are going on in human trafficking. And that number is very easy to remember. It's 888-3737-888. Very easy, right? 8s and 3s and 7s, 888-3737-888. That is the national hotline. Now, I have to give you the Homeland Security hotline because they would be mad at me, right? So the hotline number for DHS is 1-866-DHS, the number 2, ICE. But let me give you the number. That's 866-347-2423. That's DHS's hotline. But let me give you one that's really more important. And this is the hotline locally, and that's run by Miss Rundle's office. And that number is 305-FIX-STOP, FIX-STOP. But the number is 305-349-7867, and that's a local hotline. So if any of those numbers get confusing, you can always call 911. Right? To hopefully they understand what you're calling for and you get something done. So in closing, this is my closing. I'm going to give you guys something that you can do. Raise your hands if you eat chocolate. Now I'm going to ask you this question. When you bought your last chocolate product, raise your hands if you saw a fair trade label on it. Yeah. So note this about chocolate, and you can Google this and test, fact check me. You can Google the dark side of chocolate. 60 to 70% of chocolate sold all over the world the beginning process of that chocolate starts with a sold child picking a cocoa bean on the west coast of Africa. Yes. A sold child picking a cocoa bean. So my challenge and the movement that I want to see us doing here, because we can do something. So before you buy your chocolate and coffee, fair trade it. Go online, punch in fair trade. There's an organization called Fair Trade America. There's some other organization, Fair Trade. Make sure you're buying fair trade chocolate, fair trade coffee. And then maybe in a year or two, say again, you got to Google it. I don't work for fair trade. And I'm not telling you guys something that I don't, I have to make these adjustments. I'm in the boat with all of you. I don't always know the food I buy. I don't always know the clothes I buy, but we have to get there. So I'm educating myself as I'm educating you guys. So just Google fair trade. Find out what products are fair trade. Fair Trade America usually deal with products that are farm products. I know there are some other things out there that you can look at that, search engines for other things. But let's just start with chocolate and coffee. And maybe next year this time, when we're doing this presentation and we look at fair trade products up and the other stuff down, you can look at yourself and go, I was a part of changing the world. We can do this. And that's something easy for us to do. So now we got our mission and everybody asks, what can I do? Well, let's just start there. The last thing that you can do is go to my website. I started my new company, my new organization, Quest, the number 2, freedom is all one, questtofreedom.org. And I started that organization because it is my true purpose. And this is my true passion. Jean would speak to that. She's seen me here a lot of years. And my organization is a cultural awareness, education, and advocate organization. And one of the things we do, we collect donations and work on grants, but we want to put ourselves in a position, because of my experience, there's a lot of organizations that provide services, but sometimes victims are caught up in a situation where they can't get to those services right away. And I want to fill that gap. I want to be able to hey, I need a plane ticket. I need a hotel for a week until we can get them to where they need to go. That is what Quest to Freedom is all about. Educating, changing culture, changing ourselves, coming together, because in numbers, we're stronger. And I promise you guys, we can really make a difference. So don't leave here tonight saying, oh, what a great presentation, or what a bad presentation. But go home and share this stuff with your children. Share it with your communities. We can win this one. We can honestly win this. I see I got a hand up, some questions.
Thinking they were doing a good thing, not realizing theirs, they were doing a good job, but it was race around and they couldn't go anywhere, but they had a store where they made money, but then they put it at that store. It's in a cycle like they never had. But I watched this program, so we know what's going on. And yet nothing's happening. I mean, it seems like, well, they know about it. Why can't they do something?
Well, I'll tell you, you bring up, so when I talked about the United Nations in 2000, when we started our human trafficking laws, the State Department started grading countries on the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are protection, prevention, and prosecution. So the State Department does this trafficking in person report. You can Google it and really go to countries and see what countries are doing. We are a tier 1 country. That means we're dealing with all the 3 Ps: prevention, prosecution, and protection. Prevention is education, it's awareness. Protection, when we come across victims, let's have some services that they can go get help. And obviously prosecution is making bad guys accountable for what they do. But there's a 4th P. It's not part of the grading period, but the 4th P is partnership. No one works in this space alone. Law enforcement, we're not going to arrest our way out of this. We're not going to arrest our way out of this. This requires a cultural change. This requires everybody working together. So tier 1 country, you're addressing all the 3 Ps. Tier 2 countries, from my experiences, and I've been to Vietnam to help them with their program, right here across the waters, the Bahamas. I've been to Jamaica. I've been to Budapest, Hungary, teaching this stuff, helping other countries try to get their programs together. So tier 2, you're probably struggling in your prosecution. But tier 3 countries, probably the one you're talking about, they're probably part of the problem.
I think they didn't realize that.
Well, yeah, but that's the whole thing though. When you know, if you were to see my presentation, the first slide I show is about 4 or 5 kids that are being trafficked. And then I ask everybody in the room, do they have kids under the age of 18 or do they know any that they love? And then I ask them to close their eyes and imagine their kids being part of one of those kids. Sometimes people can do it, sometimes they can't. But the thing is, if that was happening to somebody you love, what would you want your community to know about human trafficking? What would you want the police department to know about human trafficking? And finally, what would you want your government to know about human trafficking? Trust me that whatever country that was, the police and the government knows. The question is, what are they doing? They know. They know. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yes, I think that's Fair Trade America. But there's some other ones out there. Like I don't work for them, but I use them when I'm looking at chocolate and coffee.
So it's mainly chocolate.
So Fair Trade America deals with mostly farm products. So bananas, fair trade your bananas. Fair trade, just Google and see what else that's covered. The more we fair trade, the more you're doing your part. And it's not hard work. It's not hard work, but we have to get in that rhythm. We have to change the culture, right? So, yes, ma'am.
On a very personal level, being older citizens, there's a lot of scams out there. And we're on our phones every day, we're on the computer every day, and people are saying, let's say your account is being expired. Hit this button, and then once you hit this button, then they want your name, your address, your card numbers, they're stealing your identity.
Yes.
We as seniors need to be aware of all these scams that are out there to protect ourselves.
Yes.
Received a phone call saying your grandson is in jail.
That's a new,
You
yep.
need to send me $2,000.
Yeah.
And they gave her this FedEx, number.
Right.
And she sent the money out of fear.
Yeah.
Well, a scam that, a lot of us, we get nervous, we get scared, and we fall for it. It's on your phones, it's on our computers every single day. And that's something that I think the elderly really need to be aware of, that don't fall for these. Like you showed us a picture of that beautiful facility, and it really was not.
Right.
We really need to be so street smart.
And I think Ms. Rundle's office is going to address that. From what I understand, they might be coming out with an app to address some of this. I think that would be a good idea if that happens. But yeah, look, younger people are getting scammed. We want to believe people. They sound so official, but they tell you, if I'm your bank calling you, I don't need to ask you what your social is. I don't need to ask, because if I'm your bank, I know who you are. But the government is never going to call you and ask for information. I've been scammed Social Security. I got frauded, not because of something I did. Somebody stole my social and filed a report. So every year I have to get a code in order to file my taxes. So I think, when we hear stuff like that, whenever you hear stuff like that, let's get it to the council. Let's make sure they're getting in the newsletters, educate people of these different scams. I had that same call one day. And, once the money's gone, it's hard to get back, right? And I get it. Do research. Don't send money. Ask somebody first. If they're saying, the police saying that somebody calling like your son got arrested, call the non-local police department emergency number and say, hey, because sometimes they might be able to find out if he's arrested or not, right? Or call the local police. Okay, well, what city? What's the police department? Then call that police department, right? And say, hey, I understand my son just got arrested. But I get it. Sometimes a lot of people are alone and they just like to hear a nice voice on the other end. So I love what Jean's doing with her group. Y'all are family, expand that family. If there's some elderly people out there kind of doing their thing, invite them in because you're stronger in numbers, but I would just say to people, if they're calling you, verify it before you send anything. If your bank is calling you, okay, hang up and then call the bank back. Yeah, you just called me, right? So I think Ms. Rundle, she's going to be putting stuff together to help people, come up with some ideas. But something like that is just that simple. But if you don't know, right?
One of the things people are not aware about, can everyone hear me? Big enough voice. A lot of us are on Facebook. And it's, what's your best color? What's your best dragon? What's your best food? What do you look like? Every one of these things that you answer to, you're giving your information away.
That is true. When I did the presentation for the NBA, they had a guy from New York he was a New York detective, but he specialized in fraud, right? Different crimes on telephone. I got this new QR code for my phone. People sending you that stuff, people tap, like I said, you're tapping on it. They're sending you texts, hey, you just won $1 million. Oh, by the way, you're #1 in the prize. I don't tap on any of that stuff. Because if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. And a lot of people are alone and they might be desperate for money and they're like, oh, this is opportunity. They're exploiting. They're just exploiting that vulnerability that people have, that void of not being connected to other people. So yeah, if it's not coming from someone don't hit it. And this stuff you got to share with your friends. You got to share with your family. You got to talk about this stuff. Don't just take this information home and be like, oh, okay, I'm smart. I'm good. I know what's up. We're better in numbers. So we got to share this stuff, right? So I don't do anything on my phone. If I don't even answer, it's hard. And I got to start answering my phone now of numbers that I don't even know, because that's normally not my thing. If I don't know you, I'm not answering. So anything else, anybody? Any comments? Any more questions?
Today, my computer froze up and it's set up in with AT&T phone. And that if I don't call this number immediately, I would not go try to turn my computer off or try to do anything. Call this number, it's the only way you can take care of it. Touching my computer off, touching the back on, it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's like another thing going around with, you can't, I mean, if I didn't know better, because it did happen before.
Right.
That just turned the computer off. And but I would have given them the information.
Yeah.
It looked like AT, it had all the stuff.
Look, if you're not sure, right. I mean, trust your gut. If it don't feel right, don't do it. Because if it is what they say they are, you'll find out because you'll hang up and call AT&T, right? So if somebody, well, I'm just saying, whatever you use. But yeah, I just trust your gut. Just if it ain't feeling right, it's not right.
These are on the elderly.
Yeah. And I mean, this is every day. I was telling a story today in another interview I was doing. And, like I said, when I was a young drug agent driving Go Fast boat, chasing drug guys, every time we figured out one way they were bringing drugs in, they had 10 other in their back pockets. And that's what scams all about. I think the Secret Service is the lead agency that does fraud. So anything that's going on, you think, for that information. I think when Ms. Rundle starts to break out her program, she's going to give you guys some hotlines to call. So I hope I'm not pushing her out there like that. But I just, look, she's the best. She's definitely the best. So Just tell her I said that, all right? But no, so I know she's really looking into this. I actually invited one of her people down for this, but they got, everybody's busy. But I told them I would definitely share the information about what they're doing and coming out with. But hey, if you guys need something from Quest of Freedom, find Gina, find me, go to questofreedom.org. We're going to be coming out with ways. Everybody's asking, Vic, how do we help? How do we help? Right now, I'm all about building my brand. I want people to know who we are. So when you see Quest of Freedom, you know what we're about. And we're just going to wave this flag. We're going to keep educating people because I honestly believe we can do something about this if we want to. If we want to. So that means we got to further educate ourselves and we got to share the information and we got to look deep. What are some of the cultural things that I'm holding on to that is part of the problem? Do I? Well, normally if you made it to a shelter, now as an agent, I did all the time because I was taking shelter, but mostly shelters are educated. I mean, everybody is going through a transformation in this space. Ms. Rundle has a great program called the Phoenix program, right? She went and got $500,000 from the state and went to Camilla's house. They build out a space for human trafficking victims. Great program. We don't have enough programs, right? So, but that was something that she did. And over that time, we had to educate people in that space. What's trauma bonding? Not everybody, victims don't act the way we think they act. We don't know how we're going to act as a victim. We can't put that on people. That's their space. So we have to be patient. We have to be kind. And think about if that was me, what would I want people to do? How would I want them to treat me? I remember having victims getting in arguments with agents, cursing them out, knowing that we're there to help. But then it was a learning curve. We had to learn man, I'm not in that spot. I have no idea what this young lady is going through. And the last thing I'll say to this is that people that work in this space, we don't save people. Firemen pull you out of a burning building, that's saving you. Coast Guard pull you out of a sinking boat, that's saving you. When you're in this space, what I'm trying to do is be an avenue to resources for you to save yourself. I could come with everything. If you're not ready, you're not ready. And we got to be able to understand that. That's why we said victim-centered, trauma-informed. Law enforcement, we went through the battle with service providers. I need your victim. I need a statement. They're not ready. They're not ready. We had to understand that. Victim-centered, trauma-informed. We got to know these things. It was a process. It wasn't pretty. But that's why I'm so passionate. I've been doing this for 12, 13 years now, and I'm still learning. We live in a country that 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted. Why isn't the reporting at that same statistic? Why? Why is that? Not just that, because we have a culture that's not welcoming. We have a culture that don't want to believe sometimes. We have a culture that blame them for being in that situation. Young lady was here earlier, and one of the things that Ms. Rundle is trying to get done here, Florida is one of 6 states that have depositions. That means if I get raped by 5 guys, 5 lawyers get to pull me in a room before we even go to trial and ask me a bunch of questions. And they're not my lawyers. They're not asking me what happened. They're saying, hey, Vic, you wanted that. Didn't you invite them over? And all she's trying, now, the thing about Florida, out of the 5 states, we're the only one that it's a right to the perpetrator. It's a right. The other states, the judge listen to the case and decide if the victim has to be deposed. So that means If you're under the age of 18 and you've been the victim of a sexual assault, you have to sit in a room with a lawyer that does not have your best interests at all. And all she's trying to do with this law is take that part out. If you're a kid under the age of 18 and you've been sexually assaulted, they're just trying to take that part out because you know what? You're re-traumatizing that person. And a lot of times they don't even go to trial. They plea out because they don't want to put young people through that process. So we need to start talking to our elected officials about that. That's one thing that has to be changed in the state. We're the only state that has that. And that's kind of harsh. So I know this is a little bit off the track of human trafficking, but all this stuff goes together. It all goes together. So it's about awareness. It's about us knowing so that we can do something about this. So anything else? Yes, sir.
Say that it happens everywhere. It happens here in Cutler Bay, it happens in Meadow Bay, it doesn't matter where you live, it's happening where you live. You have to be really vigilant and understand
The process is yes. No, and that's true. One more story. Uber guy is driving two women or three women. One girl looks very young. And the two women in the back he knows where they're going. When you get to apartment A, get the money first. Do this, do that. And he's listening to this, pulls over, call the cops, turn out to be a child that's missing, right? Airline attendant in the airport. See this good-looking guy like me, dressed all fancy, and with a young lady that looks kind of disheveled, but her demeanor is just you can see it. And she tells her colleagues and she locks the bathroom door and they got a plan. When they're serving drinks, the colleague distracts the guy and asks the young lady, does she want a drink? And went, what did I just say? Bathroom. Yeah. And the young lady said, I got to go to the bathroom. And the guy, no. She goes, no, we'll take her. She can use our bathroom. She had locked the bathroom prior and wrote a note that if you need help, just say yes and save that young child's life. This mall, I remember being down here way before when I was an agent, sending kids to the mall, hanging out. These guys are in the mall. They're looking for every opportunity. Every opportunity. We have to educate. We have to be closer to our kids. We got to be able to let them come tell us. There are parents right now, kids are being trafficked in their homes and they don't even know it. So, guys, I'm not here to scare you, sensationalize this, but it all comes back to home and it all comes back to us. The more that we change and do what we have to do, the more visual we are. And when we come together, we're stronger in numbers and we can make a difference. We can definitely, and Florida's still number 3 in the country. So a lot of work to do. Man, I really appreciate you guys and everybody in Facebook land. I hope you're getting this and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Victor, so much. I hope you've learned a little bit tonight, some of you. I know my women's club has been trained by Victor. He spent a few hours with us and we went through the whole thing. I kept getting calls and I saw this happening, I saw that happening, and for factual, things were real, they were really spotting serious issues. And we called the Homeland Security number, or we called Ms. Rundle's number, and they followed through. They really did follow through. Thank you all for being here tonight, for listening. I hope you go and you spread the word. I would like, our next session will be with the National Council for Jewish Women and Kathy Rundle are holding a session together. It's on online trafficking of the children.
Thank you, Jean. On February 21st, we're going to be having an event
at Temple Judea in Coral Gables. Our state attorney, our wonderful state attorney, thank you, Victor, for her praises. She deserves every single praise. This woman is passionate about human trafficking. Jean and I worked with her for years. We've been together for 10 years. We've gone around to schools, PTAs, hospitals, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, anyone who will hear us, right, Jean? And we talked about human trafficking. However, now the big subject, the subject at hand is cyber trafficking. Kathy Rundle will be coming to this event. She and about 3 or 4 of her staff will be speaking to us about our children, safeguarding and the exploitation of our children. We as parents, as grandparents, as teachers, as citizens, we need to safeguard these children against online predators. These children, you look at a 10-year-old, 11, 12-year-old, they all have iPhones. They all have computers. And these children spend hours on these instruments. And there are predators out that are preying on these vulnerable children. It leads to all terrible things besides trafficking, besides exploitation. It leads to bullying. It leads to insecurity. Terribly to say, it leads to suicide. We've had a lot of teen suicide. All of this all goes in a row. And it's just like Victor said, it's a child that just wants to hear a kind voice. Send me your picture. And then the picture comes back and the predator says, oh, you're beautiful. Send me your telephone number. Send me this. Send me pictures of you. And it goes on and on and on. So these children that are vulnerable, all children are vulnerable. They're on these instruments all the time. So I have flyers here for our event. It is a free event. And you're all welcome to come talk to your family, talk to your community. We're going to have a big room. We're hoping to get a big crowd. We're also going to have Mayor Kava. She's coming to speak to us also. And it's all about online predators to safeguard our children. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, thank you. Have a great evening. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, Mauricio. I'm going to turn this off.